Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Keep your fingers crossed. I have just suddenly some technical computer difficulties have decided to appear, but hopefully they will behave themselves. You're hearing me, computer. You're hearing me, wireless. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the live stream tonight, December the 1st. We're in the last month of the year, the first day of meteorological winter, and we've got some wintertime weather going on over the Central Plains and into the upper Midwest. We also have severe weather tonight, which for the beginning of December is not something you see all that often, but we've got tornado watches up for the Florida Panhandle and parts of southeastern Alabama and southwest Georgia. Uh, this red area being indicated here, and a small shrinking tornado watch that was up for parts of Illinois, and that is disappearing as well. And you can see the swirl on the satellite, the impressive upper air system that we're dealing with tonight. And of course, we've got waves of rain coming up through the Northeast, less so down in the Mid Atlantic states. So Johnny Quest may actually catch a break here, the way we've gotten the kind of the showery nature of the rain that is going on at the moment. So we're gonna take a look at all the short range weather going on, and then of course we're gonna move on to the rather interesting long range that we are going to be dealing with down the road. I'm sure by now everybody has seen something about next weekend, and with the system for the middle of the week off the table, we can focus some attention on that one. I'm not very big on handling multiple storms in the long range at the same time. Uh, whichever one is the one that's coming up first is the one you deal with, and then you start, looking down the road when you get closer and closer to it. Get rid of the first, and then move on to the second. I want to give a big welcome tonight, by the way, because we have a couple of new folks that'll be watching tonight. The first hi to everybody from SNS Storm Chasers, which is focused inside in South Central Pennsylvania, North Central Maryland. Although the group does have a large following that comes from all over the country, so I want to say a big hello to them. And I do forecasting on their website as well, ssstormchasers.org, so you can check that out. Also, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Stormwatch, and the members of that page, welcome aboard. Welcome to the followers of Angry Ben, of Angry Ben's Angry Weather. These are all their Facebook pages. And by the way, and welcome aboard. Ben was busy out in a meatball making contest today, and therefore I picked up the weather duty. So glad you're here. And finally, for those of you that are watching on my app on for Androids, which is available on Google Play. We'll put the link up a little bit later in the chat for those of you who don't have it. But if you search Google Play and just search Joe Chaffee, and you can see the spelling right over there, JoeCioffi, or meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and you've got an Android device, download away and subscribe. It focuses mainly on the northern New Jersey, Hudson Valley, lower Hudson Valley, New York City, Long Island, and southern Connecticut area. But I do put up long range posts, and there's satellites and radars on there, and snow forecast maps for all of the Northeast and the Mid Atlantic states. So you might find it of some use. And again, that's on Google for Android. Do not have the iPhone version yet. Every day, keep asking, and every day we keep waiting. So patience for you iPhone users. All right, so we're going to get started here as we take a look at this major storm that is in the Central Plains and about to move up to the slowly to the northeast. It's taking its sweet time in doing it, and that has made this a rather long duration event. Here's what it looks like tonight on the latest surface map. Normally, when you look at these storms, they're kind of oriented more northeast, southwest, or north-south. This one's sort of stretched out east-west, and part of that has to do really with the upper air in Canada, which remains, rather blocky. So this thing is sort of getting squished in a different direction. kind of seeing the pressure field spread out through the points of least resistance. You've got the low center, which really hasn't moved too much today. It's sitting in northeastern Kansas, and a large sweep of easterly winds and northeast winds. The colder air has been bleeding down from Canada into Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and in that area we are seeing some snow. And as far as the east is concerned, being impacted by the fact that you have chilly air from high pressure up to the off the New England coast that's sort of wedged its way down through the Carolinas and into North Georgia. So the coastal front, and you can see it here, is set up just inland of North Carolina and then sneaks in westward. Got a bit of a warm front here, the warm sector with the storm. So this is why you had that tornado watch up right in the warm sector ahead of that occluded front. And then another warm front that kind of snakes down into the Florida Panhandle, where the dew points are all sitting in the mid 60s to upper 60s. And this is where we have the other tornado watch that is going on tonight. So very, very busy from the standpoint of the weather that's being produced out of the storm. And you'll notice at least get a little close to the northeast. 30s, upper 20s as you go into central and northern New England, and that's where we have the risk of some snow to ice to rain. And then you start to get down closer to the coast, you're in the low to mid 40s, and we're going to fight that air as that warm front tries to move northward during the night. Oftentimes when you get these big highs that are off the New England coast and they get wedged in this way, it is a real fight to get that warm front to come through. And they seem to get hung up around New York City. So there could be a day tomorrow where that front just really struggles its way into upstate New York and into the Hudson Valley and on up into southern New England. We're just going to have to watch it hour by hour. But if you get the warm front to pass you after the rain is done tomorrow morning, you're going to wind up with temperatures that'll probably head up into the 60s. Very colorful map tonight from the standpoint of the watches and warnings that are up. In the Northeast, we have winter weather advisories from the Catskills up west of the Hudson through upstate New York, and then also for much of Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, except the immediate coast. And this is because of snow to ice to rain. Tornado watch up in the yellow area, as we indicated earlier. The dark red boxes as of 9:09 Eastern time, showing where there's some flash flood warnings up. And of course, you also have that small tornado watch that is up in central Illinois. And it looks like there's an actual tornado warning here. We can go take a look at that and see what's going on. But we do actually have between Bloomington and Pontiac in Illinois, we are seeing, here's the Mississippi River and the Missouri border, Quincy to St. Louis. We have that small tornado warning that has been issued, and this is as of 8:15 Central Time. So it was just 8:15. It expires at 8:15 Central Time. So it has another 6 minutes to go. So if you're watching this later, remember it's 10 minutes after 9 with respect to severe weather. You always want to check with the latest by going to your local National Weather Service office, which you can access by going to weather.gov and then finding your local geography as I just did. Now across the plains and on up into the upper Midwest, we have this large area of winter storm warnings covering much of Kansas, the southern half of South Dakota, southernmost Minnesota, northwestern Iowa, and then a small little finger that extends into southwestern Wisconsin with winter weather advisories surrounding that from the Rockies down through the Central Plains and then in a narrowing area as it heads over toward the Great Lakes. We have a new storm coming into the west. So winter storm warnings up for our southern half of Oregon, down through the mountains in northeastern California. Advisories surrounding that, and we've got winter weather advisories in parts of northeastern Nevada, western Utah, down into northeastern Arizona, northwestern New Mexico, southwestern Colorado. So, pretty busy with respect to the watches and warnings all around the country. All right, let's hope that was the only interruption tonight. But we've got 30 knot winds sustained in some areas, so a lot of this snow is being blown around a bit. Although when I looked at the obs, they weren't especially um, impressive. I saw a lot of areas with a mile visibility, 3/4, and but nothing that was really knocking my socks off. But I'm sure there are probably some moderates in there. The radar tonight kind of splotchy, but busy, no doubt. Again, this is as of 9/12 with respect to the severe weather that we're dealing with. So we can look at the southeast. And we've got some heavy thunderstorms there moving across the Florida Panhandle into southwestern Georgia and moving on up toward the northeast, up the coast of the Carolinas, where much of the more than half of the state is getting either rain or some moderate to heavy rain. Then you have a bit of a gap in Virginia. So Johnny Quest, you're in a good spot here. There really isn't too much going on. Further north, the first band of light rain moving through northern New Jersey to Long Island to southeastern New York and into southwestern Connecticut, and then extends up into upstate New York and in areas as you go up further into New York where temperatures are going to be below freezing for a while. When that comes in, you're going to probably see maybe some wet snow and then going over pretty quickly to sleet and freezing rain. And then you've got rain in western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, some showers and storms in northern Kentucky moving into southwest Ohio. And then we move into the weather that's with the storm. And the signature on the radar tells you that you've got a pretty vigorous upper air system here. You don't have solid coverage with respect to the precip. It gets very banded when you have a system like this that's wrapped up and occluded. So you've got areas of snow back through Nebraska. And now we're going to watch to see what happens up in northwestern Iowa as this system starts to move to the northeast. Looks like we might have a little bit of rain here in southeastern Minnesota at the moment, and then changes over to snow as you go further to the north and west. But pretty impressive from the satellite signature here. And then out in the west, starting to see the arrival of the next storm system, and we're seeing some bands of showers coming into the Pacific Northwest, also into Northern California, and that, of course, changes over to snow as you get into the mountains. The radars don't often show the full coverage here because of the mountainous terrain. A lot of the precip does get lost a bit, but we are seeing some radar echoes and also some showers moving southeastward into parts of towards Southern California, where the rain is still rather needed. So let's at this point we're going to take a look at what's going to happen with this system. The new NAM is coming out now. So what I think we'll do is I'll run through the GFS for now, and then we'll switch over to the new NAM to see how much of that we have, because that won't be done in full till about 9:45 Eastern time. But we've got the last run of the GFS, which should be close. Now, these are not radar echoes, but it's actual measurable rainfall that falls during the overnight. The one thing about the GFS that's different from the NAM is that the GFS wants to linger those showers longer during the day on Sunday. And this could be a sign of that warm front really struggling to get through, because the areas that do get into that warm sector, the isobars here would tell you that the winds, instead of being from the northeast or with an ocean component, are going to be from the southwest, or even west southwest. And that's going to dry things out and allow temperatures to rise. So anybody that gets into that warmer air tomorrow will see temperatures probably rise up into the 60s. But the GFS is very, very slow in getting that shower activity out of the way in the Northeast. And you'll notice on the northern fringe, it doesn't really show all that much from the standpoint of sleet and freezing rain, but it does have it there up in northeastern New York, the northern half of Vermont, New Hampshire, snowing into Maine that gradually changes over to rain, even all the way up to Caribou, if you want to believe it. While this is going on, you've got the primary low, which is occluded out near Kansas City, runs into eastern Iowa over Lake Michigan. That low is going to weaken. The secondary low that forms on the point of occlusion, that's where the warm front, the cold front, and the occluded front meet. And at this point right now, on this map tomorrow afternoon, it looks like it's sitting probably somewhere just northeast of New York City. That low is finally recognized by the GFS tomorrow, during the early morning hours on Monday, when it's just past Maine, and then that becomes the main system and moves away to the northeast, bringing rains, by the way, to Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, which you folks in southeastern Canada, the areas that had heavy snow from the big storm a couple of days ago, you're going to get rain, mostly rain from this. And then after that, we are going to watch the rest of the week be relatively quiet. Cold air is spreading out across the United States. And here it is on the wider surface map. We can also show you what's happening in California. You've got that rain and snow with an upper air system that's coming in and dropping down into Texas. This is going to be that system that's going to eventually just move out and develop a low way out to the east of the Carolinas for the middle part of this week. That's a non-event. And then you've got this stronger storm coming in for Wednesday. And that energy is what we'll be dealing with respect to next weekend. So we're going to stop it here at this point because I want to go to the NAM, or at least as much as we have of the NAM, so we can take a look at how it sees tonight and Sunday. And the radar presentation on the NAM is a bit more, it's showing more than what is actually on there with respect to the snow. We just saw on the radar that it was banded. The NAM radar presentation at 9 p.m. Tonight makes it look a bit more extensive. That snow continues, starts to wind down in Nebraska during Sunday, and then the low moves along. One of the things that the NAM was perhaps in error on is the fact that it was holding back that primary low too long. It is going to be moving along. And with respect to my area, this is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., the back edge of the rain to about New York City. And then other than a passing afternoon shower, most of the rain is done with by noontime, and then it moves away to the northeast. A little more aggressive with the snow and ice in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Not a whole lot, but it is a bit more aggressive with that. And then afterwards, we're going to dry out. And then we've got a cold front. You can pick up that cold front Monday morning, running from Detroit to Chicago. We're going to have to wait for that front to go by later Monday afternoon into Monday evening, and that's going to start the process of cooling the east down. And by the end of the week, we're going to be cold. Not crazy cold, but we are going to be cold. So I'm going to go back to the GFS. Oops. I do want to go to the upper air, but I want to wait for a moment. I want to just first show you what it does at the surface, and then we're going to do a little bit of explaining as to what's going on and what to look for down the road with respect to any system that is coming eastward. And by the way, this is, as always with these things, as we go deeper into the long range, the level of uncertainty just gets bigger and bigger with time. What is kind of remarkable to me with what the runs did today is that all the models, whether it be the European, the Canadian, the GFS, or the parallel GFS, or the Icon, I looked at all of them, all right, before anybody asks, they all have this system for next weekend, but they argue on the details, and that's what we'll do when we explain with the upper air. So here's your cold front that comes through. There's going to be a series of these reinforcing surges of cold air. So you're actually going to have another cold front come through on Friday morning, and that will probably bring the coldest of the cold air. And now, of course, you're seeing this energy coming out on the GFS with low pressure coming out of the Gulf into southeast Texas. And there's your primary low toward Memphis. And then it starts to weaken, and a secondary low develops over central North Carolina, which it sort of coast hugs to just off the New Jersey coast. And it's got a nice little 988 low by next Monday afternoon. Moving into the Gulf of Maine is a 983. This would be a snow to rain for the coast, and snow to maybe sleet and freezing rain, or just sleet. and some areas maybe wouldn't change at all on a track like this. Uh, we're a couple of weeks past the storm from the 15th, so the atmosphere is colder. So areas that um, may be able to hold on to it in terms of the frozen precipitation. On the other hand, you've got a track that perhaps will bring warmer air in toward the coast. Now, this is the GFS's view, obviously, and this has been changing back and forth in terms of whether it's further south or you've got a primary that's further to the west kind of situation. But this was the late afternoon model run. And now we're going to go and explain, we're going to bring up some upper air maps. And I want to explain what's going on and what you really need to look for going forward, because it is a real mess on the upper air as we start off this week. So I guess this is at least will prepare you for imminent posts that you'll see in the coming days about, you know, big storm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I've done is I've sort of pre-drawn everything here this is Tuesday night, how the upper air looks like. And one of the standout things in this pattern that you're seeing here is you have a cold flow from Canada. If you follow the height lines, they run from northwest Canada, and you have low pressure there in the darker blue, an upper low that's sitting up in northern Hudson Bay, and everything is kind of rotating around it. So that's the big machine. But the problem is, if you look at what I've lined up here in the red, those are individual shortwave troughs. There's actually 5 of them, okay, and I've got them numbered. Number 1, which is through Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. That's part of the old system, and the cold front that comes through late on Monday into the east and starts to bring in the colder air. The system that's coming in the southern stream, that's coming into the west now, winds up being represented by these 2 split short waves here, number 2 and number 3. And then you have a 4th short wave that by Tuesday night is coming into the northern plains. And then you have a 5th short wave up near Great Slave Lake in Canada, and that is also coming down in the flow. There are too many shortwave troughs. When you have a lot of systems like this running around, you'll notice that the upper flow is kind of broad here. You follow the flow from northwest Canada down into the lower Mississippi Valley, into the Gulf states, then it kind of gradually turns as it goes out into the Atlantic on an east-northeast basis. When you have too many short waves like this, you have a lot of energy, but the problem is it's all spread out over different areas. You don't have a concentrated area with of energy with any one of these troughs. And the other problem is that you've got these shortwave troughs that are running along in the southern stream, and then you've got those 3 northern shortwave troughs. You'll notice that none of them are lined up. They all are separate entities. So you don't have any opportunity here for what we would refer to as phasing, or even some partial phasing between that northern part of the jet stream and the southern part of the jet stream. They all kind of stay separate. They go on their merry way. And as a result, not much happens, which is the reason why when you looked at the GFS before and you saw what the maps looked like during this week, there wasn't a whole lot of precip going on. With these cold surges coming in, as each one comes in, there might be a couple of snow showers running around with that. Maybe a little bit of lake effect occurs, but that's really about it. What stands out, though, on this is, of course, this wrapped up upper low off the coast of California. That is the storm system that's coming in, and that's going to be the energy that is going to impact the weather for next weekend. Now, we're going to take a big leap here, okay? We're going to go to, whoops, that's not it. That was actually back on the 9th of November, so I've pulled in the wrong map up. So let me get the correct map up. Hold on. That's it. Okay. So this is next Sunday night. This is what the upper air looks like next Sunday night. And you'll notice the big difference between um, this, which is what we have for Tuesday night, and this, which is what we have for Sunday night. The upper air profile is much different here. Now, instead of having all these little short waves running around, you have a much more amplified look to the upper air. You notice that the lines, the red lines and the blue lines, are longer than they were on the other map. Okay, so you have deeper troughs, stronger ridges. Your ridges are in the blue, number 3 and number 4. So you've got a strong ridge that pumps up the Rockies. You have a ridge, not quite as strong, but you do have a ridge in between the shortwave number 1 and trough number 5. Okay, and that builds up into New England. So that is actually going to help create this high, this surface high, that's going to attempt to envelope itself around the lower pressures that are going to be down with the system coming out of the Gulf. That's shortwave number 1. The trough number 6 out in the Pacific, very deep, runs from the Gulf of Alaska all the way south to about 30 degrees north. So that is a long wave trough, a deep trough out in the Pacific. You have more amplitude here, deep troughs, strong ridges. Okay, so that's telling you that there's the atmosphere is more is stretched. You've got extreme things happening in different areas. That tension's going to have to be relieved, and you're going to have some kind of storm development, which brings us back to shortwave number 1. And then look at shortwave number 2. Shortwave number 2 is in the northern part of the jet stream that's coming down. Notice that they're separate here, okay? If they stay separate, it would possibly mean for a weaker system. I have a question mark off near the North Carolina coast where there might be some kind of surface low. Now, you can have a number of different things happen in a scenario like this. Suppose, for example, shortwave number 1 and shortwave number 2 phase. In other words, they come together and they become one of the long wave troughs, like you see in numbers 5 and number 6. All right. If that were to occur, and the axis of where they come together is further west, it's west of the Appalachians, okay, along 90, then you're going to see a surface low. Instead of that question mark being in near coastal North Carolina, it's probably going to be more back to the west in Kentucky or West Virginia. So then you run the risk of seeing a primary low that's going to try to run up the west side of the Appalachians into western Pennsylvania and western New York. Now, if these two systems stay separate and then they phase closer to 80 west, that northern part comes down and starts to get involved with that southern feature, then you may have that coastal low idea. If it phases enough, that low will move up the coast and impact the Northeast. And of course, depending on cold air and all the other variables, we'll have to figure that out in the short range about who gets rain, who gets snow, and how much. The other possibility is the two systems just basically stay separate, and the southern part of the shortwave just kind of moves along. And what would happen there is that you would have a low move more northeast, further offshore. So precip would only get so far north before it would cut off, and it might not even make it to New York City. So this is the dilemma that the upper air presents. It's a rather dynamic look when we go into next weekend. The puzzle pieces are certainly there for something to happen, but we don't, we're still well into the time frame where there's a lot we don't know, and we're assuming that this is going to be correct. What we don't know could be the fact that, well, as we get closer to time, maybe those troughs won't be as deep. 5 and 6 may not be as deep as being forecast. Ridge 3, if the troughs aren't as deep, then the ridges won't be as strong, and the flow could be flatter, or they could be further west or axis further east. So again, this is the model's picture It's kind of taking a snapshot of the atmosphere now and coming up with a forecast based on that snapshot. It took a new snapshot at 7 o'clock tonight, and from that snapshot, we're going to see the model guidance that starts to come out in well, it's already started to come out because we've already have the new NAM in play. So that pretty much, that pretty much summarizes where we are and where we're going to be going come next weekend. Uh, I can show you a couple of the other models that at least illustrate the possibilities. Let's bring the European up, and I'll bring the European's upper air. So here we go. Get that North America view. And when you look at the European's upper air, it's got that really messy look that we just saw on the GFS for Tuesday night into Wednesday. This very this jet with 1,000 short waves running around. And here's a solution on the European that's different from the GFS. You do have that trough out in the Pacific, okay? You do have that trough out in the Atlantic, but big difference. I'm just going to really quick, I'm going to bring back up that GFS map that I showed you, okay? So there it is, right? That's for next Sunday night. The European, it's not an exact match. It's about 12 hours off because we only see every 24 hours on the European versus every 6 hours on the GFS. But you can see how the GFS has its look for next week. And now I'm going to switch to the European for the same day, just 12 hours earlier. Look at the difference across the continental United States, and look what it does with that southern stream system. It has it stretched out east-west. There's no short wave in the north coming down to speak of. It's much weaker. You've got the trough out in the Pacific. You've got the trough out in the Atlantic, but they're not quite as amplified. It has a much flatter look. So this is where the European argues that you're going to take a surface low that's going to move across the south, move off the North Carolina coast, and you see where the lines are going. That's the flow. It's west to east. So you would take a surface low off North Carolina and move it straight east. Now, if this is right, places like West Virginia, Western Virginia, Johnny Quest, pay attention, down into Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, and maybe even the mountains of South Carolina could probably get a substantial snow event out of this if this winds up being correct. And we don't know that it is. There's a natural tendency in the weather world to still kind of respect the European, that it has the upper hand, and it really doesn't. Specifically, when you go out into the longer term, you got to be really careful, and you're going to see, the European has not been too successful in what it shows out in its longer term. We certainly could wind up seeing, and I would bet when the night run comes out tonight, that it will probably show something a bit different. The takeaway also is the fact that it does also have the same, it does also reflect a storm system. And in fact, I'll bring up the surface map for this on the European. And there you have the low sitting in eastern North Carolina. This is for Sunday morning. And then that low is going to wind up pushing out almost straight eastward because of the very flat nature of the upper flow. The parallel GFS, okay? The parallel GFS, on the other hand, has what could be the possible compromise where it takes a low northeast and then turns it east, actually deepens it quite a bit here. And again, this would have to do with the fact that it has a slightly different view of how it sees the upper trough. So this actually would bring snow up to Washington, D.C., Baltimore, to just barely to New York City, southern New England and Long Island, a pretty wrapped up low there off the Delaware coast, but it never quite gets to lift northward because it has a weaker view of the upper trough in the east. And there you have it. On the parallel, it doesn't have that northern stream shortwave. Okay, it has a stronger northwest flow in Canada. I will tell you this: given what's just happened, where the GFS was wanting to, make ridging in the New England and into southeastern Canada with this system that we're dealing with tonight, uh, and into the first part of next week. It was trying to do that with respect to the system that's going to follow now for the middle part of this week. That's wrong. The European and the parallel GFS were trying to show that northwest flow being more important, that northern part of the jet is more important. If it is, in this scenario, the southern stream stays active, but it does get suppressed to some degree. There's another upper low sitting here north of Maine that it's keeping it from lifting completely up the east coast. So that's another possibility that you could wind up seeing. And the Canadian kind of goes along with the European and the parallel. The same, actually, more toward the parallel GFS, where it brings a surface low, a deepening surface low, but it keeps it just offshore as it moves up the coast. So, look, we've got a ton of days to watch all this play. And we're not going to, we're not going to be on tomorrow to be able to tell you exactly what's going to happen. It's We still have to even wait for the energy in and of itself to come in and come into the Pacific and get analyzed. Remember, when they're out in the Pacific, the satellite data is very good, but it's always good to have raw data in there, and they get the raw data once it makes landfall. The upper air, I just switched over to the NAM. I wanted to kind of take a look at that system for Tuesday and Wednesday. You do see a short wave here in western Kentucky extending southward. It's on the flat side. Look at you got the strong flow from the northwest in upstate, from southern New Jersey, actually, all the way up into southeastern Canada. So that tells you right there you're going to have a tough time lifting this system up to the northeast. Remember, it's like those gears I've always described. That old gearbox toy for toddlers, and the gears are, you put all the gears together and you turn one gear and all the gears turn, with the difference being that the gears in the weather world and in the atmosphere are constantly changing in size and in magnitude, and that changes the outcome. It's like a cruel Harry Potter puzzle where you think you got the pieces to put together, and suddenly the pieces morph into something else. But you've got actually some convective activity that forms Monday night along the Carolina coast and moves out to the northeast. This is not the sort of situation where you would see a low develop. Where you're going to have to, you would gradually see it pull back to the north and west. It's going to, if you do wind up seeing that happen, you're going to start with a low that's way out in the ocean anyway. So even if it gets pulled back a bit into the north and west, it's not going to be pulled back enough to be anywhere close to causing some issues. And other than, again, very, very quiet for the eastern 2/3 of the U.S., at least certainly through Tuesday, and probably through the whole week ahead. It looks to be on the quiet side, except for the west. We start to get that energy coming in from the west, and then we're going to start to see things get very busy later in the week across the western Gulf states as that low starts to come out. So a lot to watch, a lot to chew through when it comes to the models over the coming days, but there's nothing here at the moment that we can point to and say, okay, this is what it is. This is definitive. This is what is going to happen. So sometimes it's especially for a week out. One of the things I don't like about the way the weather world works these days with some of these systems is that it's endless. I mean, it literally is endless when it comes to watching this stuff. that you're looking at it for 10 days in advance, and by the time it finally gets to you, you're mentally exhausted. I mean, you're just fried from uh, from all the analysis you've been doing. So, going to come to the chat board, participate in the conversation. Excuse me, I'm trying to fight back tornadoes. Mirtha Gunter, they're down in the Florida Panhandle. I mean, the tornado watch and the heavy thunderstorms. There was a tornado warning up for an area north of Bloomington, Illinois. I know you guys are all probably kind of discussing about snow on the ground for a white Christmas. That's a long way off, by the way. So, and you know how I feel about the long range. So, anyway, running through your chats, Rick. 8013, good evening to you from stormy southeast North Carolina as you were in that rain. Kathy Albano, welcome aboard. Chris Alley, nice to see you. Scott Briller, Johnny Quest, all the regulars that are on here tonight. It's always good to see you. Gary Rivard, Timothy Veltman, and I get my call of duty for Johnny Quest, but a lot less rain on the radar for you at the moment. Patricia Jackson, nice to see you here on board. Again, welcome to those of you who might be watching from S&S Storm Chasing and Forecast Team, South Central PA, North Central Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Storm Watch page on Facebook. Welcome to you. Jump in on the chat if you'd like. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, jump in on the chat. We always welcome the conversation. And also, from Angry Ben's Angry Weather. You folks on his page. He'll be back tomorrow now that he's done making meatballs on the meatball contest that he had near his home. And my app, folks, on my Google app. Good to see you. Good to see you on. The white Christmas definition, William Uber, snow on the ground, snowing Christmas Eve is a jackpot. You know, for me, if there's snow on the ground on Christmas Day, it's a white Christmas. If it snows on Christmas Eve, a bonus. Although it does make it tough for folks to get around. So I'm not sure everybody is happy about seeing snow on Christmas Eve. But if there's snow on the ground, I'm good with it. The earthquake in Alaska, Seth Dominus, the aftershocks have just been going on, and it's just insane with the earthquake. Jason Schaefer, nice to see you. Veruca Hansen, welcome. 12 tornadoes already in the state of Illinois. Unbelievable to see the severe weather where it is. But you've got this upper low like that, the way the upper low is structured, and you got a lot of a very unstable atmosphere with that occluded low, the warm tropical air from the Gulf of Mexico trying to push northward. All the pieces are there for severe weather. It's unusual to see tornadic activity in this time of year. But as I said, if you got the setup, you go for it. Let's see. Let's see. Doesn't look like the big one, Scott Briller. I assume you're talking about the system coming in from the west. The upper air with it is not the most ideal, and as shown, especially if you look at what the other models have been doing, with the flatter look, then you have to kind of take a step back and say, yeah, this is not going to be a big storm with respect to what's coming into the east, but we still don't know what we don't know. The GFS might have maybe it's got the right idea with a much more amplified look when we go toward next weekend. I don't know. The model runs are not going to really tell us too much through at least the first half of this week. We have to get to midweek let's watch the model trends. I think the important thing is watching the trends of the models over the next couple of days We could certainly start to see if the GFS comes away from that amplified look and goes to a flatter look, or if the other models come away from their flatter look and go to a more amplified look. I think something's going to come out of this, and in terms of the storm coming out of the southwest and head for the east coast, because all the models have something there. Okay, it's not like you've got one model doing it and none of the others doing it. You've got all the models showing something coming out across the Gulf, and they've been very consistent over the last 2 or 3 days with this idea. So, and in fact, the error hasn't really been all that great with respect to the tracks and with what the upper air. So so that at least lends confidence that okay, we are going to probably see something come out, but we're still not going to know with regards to what the outcomes are going to be. Let's see. Johnny Quest, 20 inches snow-wise, December 19th of 2011. That was a big storm up here too. We had 20 plus inches up here. That was a Saturday night, as I remember. And I remember I had friends over for dinner when they came here, when they arrived, which was at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. It hadn't even started snowing yet. And when they left, when they went to leave after 11, I hadn't even looked outside. I opened the door and there was almost a foot of snow on the ground, and it was snowing very, very hard at that point. That was a pretty interesting storm, that December 19th, 2011 storm. In fact, I can, because we can do this. Hang on, stay with me, folks. We can actually pull it back. We can pull it up and go. I guess this would be our way of doing retro weather. Let me bring up the surface map. We can go into the surface map library. If you go to WPC and go to their surface analysis page, and on their surface analysis page, there's a link to this interactive surface map. And there's a calendar in the upper corner, which I'm going to use right now. And you can go back, as they have the weather maps in here archived all the way back to 1985. So there's a lot of information. December. Let's see if you got the dates right, Johnny. Let's see if you got the dates right. No, because I even got my date wrong. December 21st. No, that wasn't it. I remember the storm, but maybe it wasn't 2011. Hang on. Let's try 2010. 2010 is Boxing Day, so that's not it. So it's got to be 2009. December 19th, 2009. There it is. This is the one, at least for me, that maybe there certainly wasn't there anything on 2011, but this was the low that I was just talking about. So it was December 19th, 2009, and that low brought in, that was a 980-ish low east of the Delaware coast this is at 1 a.m. on Sunday morning the 20th, and it was still snowing in and around New York City, Long Island, through all of this. So this was the 2009 storm. My guests were long home at this point, but that was quite a snowstorm for New York City, for Long Island, and there were 20-inch plus amounts before this was all said and done. I like this, having this, because we all bring back our storm memories. We might as well be able to go back and look and see what exactly happened, and we can certainly learn from those experiences from a forecasting standpoint, because each storm brings its own individual characteristics, and while they have a very broad set of commonality, of things they have in common, every one of them has something slightly different that can cause your forecast to go a little bit off the wall. And Well, that was too far offshore, but there wasn't anything in 2011 from what we saw on the map there. Um, so that map, it goes back, Reaver, to 1985 in terms of what's in the archives. All right. Okay. So we'll put a stop to it at this point. Again, thanks very much for being here, especially those of you who are here for the first time. Really appreciate you joining me on my live streams. The Those of you who are in again. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Another signal interruption here. So okay, here's the link to my app on Google Play, which is absolutely free. And here is the link for those of you who want to use that interactive tool. Here is the link to the interactive tool. It's on WPC's website, WCP dot I'm sorry, WPC dot ncep.noaa.gov, and that's your interactive surface map that you can pull up going back to 1985. Those of you who are very much into weather, you might want to consider subscribing to my platform and we'll make it really obnoxiously big here, Patreon. Okay, this is a good place for those of you who really want to get into weather in a big way. You can. I have posts there going up all day long. We also have live streams just for Patreon members, and you can message me at any time. So that link is up there for you. This is a subscription site, and it's just $2 a month. It's the price of a cup of coffee, and it goes a long way to help support what I'm doing. And if you are shopping on Amazon for Christmas, you can do it via the Joe Stradamus link that I have on Amazon. It's also, this is an easy way to support my channel. If you're shopping there, you get your stuff, and then Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin out of their pocket. They put a few things in my stocking, and everybody is happy. So consider those possibilities there for you. You've got the app, you've got Patreon, and you can shop on Amazon. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. Thanks very much, everybody. It was a good night tonight. I saw some of the nice things you said about my presentation tonight. I really appreciate it greatly. I want to at least, at least I want you to leave here with the idea that figuring weather out and forecasting is no easy task, and it's you can see, if you get a visualization of just how complicated it is, I think that's a good thing, and it gives you a better understanding of how weather works. All right, we will be live streaming tomorrow night, so be sure to tune in and look for posts that'll be up either on my website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com, or Angry Ben's website, nycweathernow.com, or you can go to the SS Storm Chasers site, which is ssstormchasers.org. All right, have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.